Namo Fo, Namo Fa, Namo Sen. Homage to the Buddha, homage to the Dharma, homage to the Sangha. Welcome everyone. Today I want to do another part in the introduction to practice on demand of several of my students, and especially one. These are an introduction to retreats, and especially to solitary or retreats in small groups. This kind of retreats is in the style or in the spirit of chant, Zen if you want, hermitages, or in the pilgrim style of going to one temple to another, also Zen of course. One of the specificities of an hermitage, be it in our Western context, in our own houses, or in China, in the famous Changnan Mountains, for example, is that an hermitage is generally a very small place, very simple, 1 or 2 rooms. Let's call that room the practice room. Serves for all the traditional halls that a traditional monastery or temple might have. There are the sitting hall, the chanting or Buddha's hall, the dormitory blocks, the kitchen. It is a kind of minimalism, to put it in a way that is fashionable today, but without a necessary austerity. It isn't a kind of dry practice. So don't forget to smile in the process of doing a retreat. And remember that no one made you do that. You are responsible. And that to do a chant Zen retreat is a chance. You see the credo in kind of Dharma words of our Sangha, our simplicity, humility and sincerity. It is in that spirit that we created the Sangha, and that's also the spirit that we received from the founders of our order, the Zen Buddhist order of Soyun, namely Master Wen Miao Jidin Chakya and my own Dharma teacher Mingzen Chakya. But when one tries to do a retreat, especially solitary or small group retreats, we are generally inspired by the traditional hermitages. We have in mind monasteries deep in the mountains of China, Korea or Japan. And we face the simplest and most down-to-earth things there are: cleaning, making food. So there isn't not much romanticism involved there. And actually the romanticism kind of vanishes through experience of the very simple and direct things that you have to do to be responsible for yourself during that period. Remember also that a retreat isn't something you do as a kind of a cool holiday. Traditionally, you only do a retreat because it is needed on your practice. It isn't something you choose or buy through the internet. Remember that we bring our own hell with us, and we see into it through following rules, schedules, and practices that serve an absolutely purposeless purpose. We've got to have a purpose, and we will talk about it, but our retreat has to be aimed at something in order for us to accumulate the tension on one single pointed location, if you want, spot, purpose. Such a simple retreat can be done anywhere. It could be in your practice room, in your house. It could be actually in your bedroom if you live alone. It could be in a tent in your garden or in a nearby park. It could be in the wild, in nature. It could be in your garden. But pay attention again to romanticism. Safety first, especially if you are doing it in a pilgrimage style, or even in a tent. It can be dangerous. Remember also that the main point is constant attention. Be it when you sit, when you walk, or when you work. Remember also that a retreat has to have a purpose, so there are different types of retreats. It can be a sitting retreat, like a pilgrimage, going to one point to another, a hiking retreat if you want. It can be a sitting retreat. There is of course always walking meditation involved in a sitting meditation retreat. It can be a walking retreat, generally on a piece of art, or to give help to repair or rebuild something. It can also be a kitchen retreat, and these are absolutely wonderful, where you support a practitioner or some of them in their practice, in making everything possible for them to have a constant attention on their work, and at the same time to give yourself totally with that same constant attention to serve the work of knowing our own minds. About hiking retreats, Brother Shanghai wrote something quite good, some beautiful lines, and adapted the liturgy well for a natural practice, indicating well in the good spirit. Or you can use the simple daily liturgy, the shortest one, to support yourself when you go in nature, actually even for a few hours or for a few days. You can adapt the liturgy just as well. Remember that if you are hiking, liturgy, instruments and books and robes, all that must fit in a monk's bag. If you have wooden fish drum, it must fit in your monk's bag too. I must say that when I do a pilgrimage retreat or walking retreat, call it what you want, I generally use 2 small bamboo sticks about 20 centimeters long, and they do a beautiful noise. Or I simply use clappers. 2 clappers do also a more high-pitching noise, but also beautiful noise. I must say sound. I think noise is That's a rather negative term, probably in English. Anyway, um, so I like to have clappers and a small handbell, but that's for me. And I like to think about walking retreats, as I said, as pilgrimages between temples, and that's quite traditional. And I often choose, because I'm in old Europe, a monastery or church dedicated to the Christian Mother Mary or Virgin Mary, since I really believe that she has the archetypal function of the Chinese Quanshi or Kanon in Japanese, in our European psyche, conscience, call it what you want. So it is always good to have an objective in a pilgrimage retreat or a walking retreat, be it an historical thing, a natural one, a religious one, actually one that you feel linked to. It can be either in a totally natural area, or you can begin the pilgrimage when passing your door in your very neighborhood. I have the chance to have rivers and hiking and cycling pathways nearby, even if I'm living in the border of a big city. And I use that to go to diverse sites around as pilgrimages. But you could ask, actually, okay, this is all quite nice, but for how long? Well, 7 days is the traditional chant retreat. And a traditional chant retreat called a chunky, it actually just means 7 days of Zen. To be really traditional, a chant retreat must have 3 people serving them. It must have a master of discipline, a master of ritual ceremony, if you want, and a master of teaching. We generally call our practice not really as retreat, but as intensive days of practice, in respect to that tradition of a Chan retreat is 7 days with 3 people and their assistants. So it is really more an intensive day, but well, in the West, and especially in the English language, retreat is quite a term that can encompass all these meanings, but we don't call our retreat chunky. About the retreat itself, remember its special purpose, and remember that there's actually soft and hard practice. Our day-to-day life, as I already explained many times, is soft practice. We practice as we can sincerely in our day-to-day life, trying to express, to manifest our practice through our own actions, with very little things every day, like small drops on a big rock, trying to drill a hole in it, drop by drop. But in our practice, especially if we are very sincere with it, it can become quite existential. There are times where we need to go through the tension. We need to go through. like a waterfall channeled to pierce, to drill very forcefully with a lot of strength into that big rock. And that's really piercing through tension without accumulating tension. Because you see, at these times in the practice where you feel a lot of tension and you've got to go through it, you are very serious about it. And that's generally the time where we put so much strength in our practice that we tend to especially push our breath too much on our heads or on the below part of the belly, on the lower part of the belly, or on the higher part of the head, especially when we exhale, when we breathe out. And that's really the cause of that accumulated tension that is aggravated to this tendency that generally is really unconscious to push the breath, is the origin of some Zen diseases that can cause a lot of pain. And that is actually why the egg peel of light, or call it what you want, meditation. The egg of light is probably the simplest way to call it, but meditation is so useful. I introduced it in another talk. In the Chinese tradition, and that come mainly from the Taoist tradition, but not only. It also exists in other ways. In the Confucian tradition, they talk about Qi, energy, if you want. Jing, which is more strength. Qi is breath. Life, if you want. You can think about it, about the breath of life. Jing is energy, and especially inner energy. That is the result of Qi. And Chen, which is the spirit, which is the result of the good energy fueled by the breath into a good direction. And at a certain point in the practice, there is a lot of cultivating Qi, and there is a lot of accumulation of Jing, and it is equated to, in the traditional chant, in Chinese in general, practices as semen. So especially for guys, when you do a retreat, guys, you're not there to masturbate, and I know that this is quite laughable, we could laugh about it, but losing inner strength through sensual projection is a bad idea during a retreat. That energy is projected on the path, and that doesn't mean that there is no sensual life. It is just projected differently, and that's very important. So remember that a retreat is firstly a place for self-knowledge, for self-honesty. So don't lie to yourself in any manner. It is a place of mirroring. It is a mirror to yourself, and you will corrupt your own perceptions, and then you can't trust anything. So it is a place to nourish the seed of truth. Just this, what you like and don't like isn't called into that practice. So don't follow too much your thinking. For example, don't change Dharma doors. Don't change your practice, your type of practice, especially in a solitary retreat. When there is a schedule, follow it. Be it chanting, your main practice, of course, be it a Buddha's name chanting, or chanting a mantra, or practicing with a huatu, or just listening, or just sitting, stuck to it. Chant Zen is not about a special method. Stuck to it. That is the whole point. Bite on it. And don't let it go, as hard and as sincerely as you can. You will fall inevitably, that's for sure, but just return to whatever you were doing. You see, not long ago, actually a few days ago, I saw a TV series. That's something I don't do a lot. And I remembered, because I had forgotten it, the effect of this series on our inner emotional life, in the way that I kind of felt that in 50 minutes I had lived many, many days, and I really was into it, but it was also kind of exhausting and very demanding. And a way to also work on that side of ourselves and not let our practice be just a dry practice of wisdom through reading and practicing a very dry meditation, is simply to use that same ability for emotions, that inner life of emotions, that side of ourself, in another way, and especially through drawing. So, for especially a solitary retreat, you may select a few simple Buddhas or Bodhisattva images to draw. And there is really no need to be an artist. Everyone can express yourself, and it is done primarily to empty mind through your hands, which is an expression I absolutely love. Because really it's about that. And it kind of plants something different. And that's a lovely way to work with the more emotional side of our inner life during these very concentrated, one-pointed phase that retreats are. If you are absolutely alone, you will have to, of course, make your own food and everything. But if you have an assistant, and traditionally I must say that an intensive day of practice or a retreat, call it what you want, that lasts more than a day, has to be assisted traditionally. That means that someone has to actually give you food. But the assistant can be used in many other ways. And one of the ways is that the assistant may, at certain times of the day when you are practicing walking meditation, he may strike a stick of wood or just let it fall on the ground. And your job is just to walk meditation, and generally you walk faster and faster through the meditation, the walking meditation, especially if the walking meditation is a long one. And you get to just stop. And that's actually a reflex in a lot of animals, to just stop when there is a loud noise. And that's a wonderful way, especially if you're practicing Hua Tu, to shed some light into U is actually repeating the Buddha's name. U is actually walking. U is actually listening to that very talk. So again, during your practice, don't try to change Dharma dose. You must be very clear with what kind of practice you will practice. With what kind of practice you will practice as your main practice before the beginning of the retreat. And the best thing, of course, is to plan it with your Dharma teacher, because traditionally, again, you do a retreat because you need it. So because your Dharma teacher and you have talked about it. A very important thing is to not change plans or try to escape. Face the tension and pierce through it, drill in it. And facing tensions actually means, in a way, jumping into the unknown. Face the unknown with an open and joyous mind. You see, meditation is often boring. Don't make it worse. Entering and keeping at heart of that is keeping at heart the don't know mind. It is keeping the Buddha at heart in a very courageous manner. It is striving to know ourselves better. So in the end, who are you? And what is this? And don't know. These are wonderful Watus. These are the very existential questions that can turn our lives upside down. And remember that your own retreat hasn't to be your own hell. So push yourself into it without hurting yourself. It is about courageous hard work and submission to a certain discipline. It is arbitrary and adapted to an occasion, and we don't like that. But it is important. The hard task must be done with a joyous mind, reminding us that it is actually a wonderful opportunity that we have to be both alive and lucky enough to have the privilege to participate in a retreat. We must be grateful every day of the retreat for all those who made it possible, from the ones who grow the food to our potential wife, friends or family, because we are lay practitioners in a Western background. Try to bear in mind all of these persons when you practice. And then we can practice in that way very hard to realize our Buddha mind and to help them paradoxically, just as they helped us being able to do a retreat. So don't be lazy, but don't be a tyrant to yourself. Now there are a few things that can help. One of these is to not sleep too much. Actually, I would recommend between 5 and 7 hours of sleep. Another thing is to not eat too much and to drink quite a lot. This is important, as I said, to really be grateful and dedicate every moment. What an immense chance we have. So you can do a lot of hejang, gasho, hands together, bowing with your hands. That's actually a very humbling practice. I mean, you You just did something in the kitchen, bow. You put something in the fridge, bow. You just finished something or begin something, bow. Very simply, put your hands together, echang, or gasho in Japanese. It is also important during a retreat to, in advance to it, have prepared some work. Again, it can be a very down-to-earth thing that you will do. It can be something artistic, it can be anything, but focused on the Dharma and helping others, of course. Another thing that I wanted to say about the retreats, it's a little tradition I like a lot and we use, is the writing of poems. Actually, generally it's like after the last liturgy is done, and with it there's a time for work or for art. And I will share the schedule in a very open schedule way. I won't put hours next to each thing, but it's kind of what you can do from waking up to going to sleep very briefly. So writing a poem is a lovely thing to do every day. It can be in that work time at night. It is as leaving a trace of the journey day by day, and allow actually to project. And that projection comes out in a positive way if you want. And there is also the fact of doing a poem at the end of the retreat. I mean, traditionally you do a poem at the end of the retreat and you show it to the meditation or teaching master of that retreat. And all the poems put together, either the poems of each participant or all the poems you did during each day of the retreat, can be summed up at the end of the retreat. And that's a lovely practice and a lovely, actually, gift as a manifestation of a retreat. I like Western haikus, but well, anyone can do something different. Another very important thing that is less romantic but very important is to actually clean your room. Even if there is an assistant, you are the master and responsible of the room you're practicing in. So clean your room every day, of course, or your tent or whatever, your place of practice. Another thing I could talk about is the practice of night sitting meditation, Yezuo in Chinese or Yaza in Japanese. Night practice, when you feel the need to push to the tension, is very inspirational. And you can have a great benefit from it when you choose to do it and you assume it to the end. It is very different to be forced to do a night practice after the actual official schedule by some responsible in a retreat. That's very different. But so in our tradition, the night sitting Yezuo is something you do because you want it. Nobody can force you to actually keep sitting. And a lot of time thus you will feel the need for Yezuo, for night practice, to kind of pierce through the tension, to go beyond. But always assume it and wake up at the same hours and be responsible. About the liturgy in a retreat, especially it's a literary retreat, is quite simple. It is the same as the short daily liturgy we use. The unique difference is that after the short Kuan Yin Sutra in the morning, you add the Shinjin Ming, or Shinjin Mei in Japanese, the chant of relative and absolute, I think, in English. And in the evening you add contemplating mind, the chant or poem by Han Shan. The other difference, of course, is the fact that we use morning and evening bell chant in a retreat setting, and I can send you those. Also, don't take too much stuff to read, but take a book or a manual or a sacred text which is about the main practice you will do in your retreat. And twice a day, at a chosen time, I will share in the schedule that I will put in description, a schedule that you can follow as you want, and there is a place in that schedule for receiving the teaching. I advise in the Suyun selection of teachings, a booklet we put in our Zen text page at our website, dharmawindzensangha.org, and especially the second text in these Suyun selections of teachings called the Chant Training. That's a wonderful text that has the same qualities that the text we will make a series of in our study. The next text, which is about the practice of Nianfo, keeping the Buddha at heart. That quality is that begins by the very simple, basic stuff, and it goes in depth into the most wonderful teachings that can accompany you in a retreat. Again, I can also say mundane things like never eat to be full, drink a lot and never eat too much. It's kind of a fast if you want a retreat. You don't have to eat too much really. Also remember that when there is too much tension in the seated posture, especially during the extra practice at night, use the light pillow, egg pillow flight technique, call it what you want, to relieve the tension and deepen the breath without pushing too much, especially pushing in your lower belly or upwards in your head, because it will come almost unconsciously. Also remember, I advise not more than 5 to 7 hours of sleep. No need to say that you can use incense also in your practice. Also, when you don't know what to do or you are tired of following a certain set of things and it is just too difficult, don't let yourself just be bored. Walk or sit with the Buddha's name, chant a Buddha's name out loud, or draw a Buddha or Bodhisattva from a picture that you have with you. So remember that our art is attention. Our face, what we have confidence in, is our Buddha nature. And our aim is seeing mind, our true face beyond space and time, and that's the very definition of Amitabha. That's why we are a chant Pure Land school, like almost all Chinese schools. We can also say our true face before birth and after death, in a more classical chant, especially Tang chant, or Zen way. Call it what you want, really. So most of these can also be used in an half-day retreat, or an intensive day of practice. have also in mind that after the retreat, when you may only have 15 minutes a day, stay with your main practice, softly, gently throughout the day. Return to it when you have time, and maybe in the 15 minutes of formal practice that you can afford, I will recommend practicing inner repetition of a sacred name, Nianfo in Chinese or Nembutsu in Japanese. Repeating the name of a Buddha, of a Bodhisattva, of a mantra, fully repeating the name and fully listening to the name in the secret of your inner silence. That's really a wonderful practice and an excellent basis for practicing observation. When you have more time, more energy, the observation of who is repeating and listening, the Huatu beyond words, beyond thought. So right now, who is listening? Amitofo.